Welcome to our webinar. I'm David, and I just want to say a really quick thank you to Sitecore for having us on and to share our ideas, and thank you to everyone that's listening. I hope that you find something interesting in the presentation, and please do hang around and ask questions. We're really keen to understand what others are thinking about this topic. So the first thing I wanted to touch on was a little bit of background on IE. We are the Innovation Experience Company. We've been around for 15 years. We have offices across Melbourne and Sydney, and our focus is delivering innovative technology solutions, including everything from activations through to enterprise website development on platforms such as Sitecore. So to start us off, I actually want to turn back the clock really quickly to where a lot of our work bringing digital into physical spaces actually started. So in the early days of IE, we started doing a really wide range of weird and wonderful work in digital that went from the very simple website stuff to crazy things like the event that we've put on the screen today for Sony Ericsson. So this was pre-smartphone, using SMS technology to have thousands of people in an event space texting in their details to enter a massive interactive live prize draw, projected up onto these huge digital screens around the arena to get messages back to basically find out what prize they won and for the prize draw. So we had things like this. We had on-pack promotion campaigns for 7-Eleven slushies where every slushie purchased allowed a customer to enter an online game that had many mothers entering the requesting that we brought the whole thing down. And I mean, this was really early in our evolution, so we'd accidentally put our details on the website, so we had people physically calling up our office asking us to shut down the website. Thankfully, that was a long time ago, and we've learned a lot since then. And of course, technology has evolved. Our work bringing digital into physical spaces really started gathering momentum through our work with Nike. From rear projected interactive tables like what you see on the screen, which was a couple of shipping containers that went around the country, showcasing the Nike Tech Pack, which at the time was their newest sort of range, to event apps that seamlessly integrated with event signage through geofencing technology. We're able to build out our own practice, all the while better understanding what really makes these initiatives successful. This led us to our most recent chapter in this particular journey, launching our own startup in the category. FoilLive is a digital experience platform that we designed from the learnings we had from years of working in the space, designed to seamlessly integrate with companies' existing technologies like Sitecore to extend their capabilities outside the browser as we know it into staff concierge devices, mounted touchscreens, and large digital displays. That business has been successfully launched and in market for over a year now and is headquartered out of the Westfield Retail Labs in San Francisco.
Thanks for that overview, Dave. Nick here. I'd like to start on a slightly digitally morbid note, I suppose, by declaring probably what a lot of you already know. Omnichannel, or at least that terminology, is dead, as far as we know. And in the words of Mark Rosen, who's the president of global e-commerce at Levi Strauss & Co., the word omnichannel will go away. Consumers don't know and don't care about these concepts. And he couldn't be more right. The boundaries between online, offline, mobile, and traditional bricks and mortar retail have completely blurred. The only thing that really matters now is your customer. And today, that customer is in complete control. So whether they're visiting your store armed with their mobile phone or exploring your brand on the couch with their tablet, a personal, seamless experience is expected. And what it's called, frankly, is completely irrelevant. Left in Omnichannel's wake is a booming industry of digital innovation, seeking to serve these new customer needs and facilitate a consistent customer journey. Fueled primarily by retail and entertainment, businesses globally are pioneering and leveraging new technologies to develop deep emotional connections with consumers and streamline any process that can be accelerated or reimagined. There's a definite shift occurring as consumers, particularly millennials, move closer towards a state of always on or constantly connected, and in turn demand digital interactions that feel authentic and of value to them. If you get it right, they're more than willing to share with their peers, and if you get it wrong, they probably will too.
So I just wanted to stop for just a quick minute, just to discuss a bit about how we sort of got here as a culture. If you've ever seen Andre, one of the co-founders of Vino Mofo, speak, he has this really great analogy for describing how interactions between customers and companies have evolved over time. It basically goes like this. In the olden days, we'll call it, my history isn't too strong, so I don't want to peg down an exact time period. But back in a time when commerce was very community-centric, you'd have a town, in that town would be a bakery. The baker of that bakery would sort of know every customer that came in and hold personal relationships with each of them, knowing that if they poisoned one of those relationships, that person could potentially go around to all of their customers in the town and convince them to maybe go to the next town to buy their bread, which could be fatal for his business. So he understood exactly how important it was to maintain those customer connections. Then, essentially, the Industrial Revolution happened, and the way that businesses scaled up and could serve their goods to global audiences completely revolutionized the way this worked, and took all the power away from consumers to dictate how businesses communicated to them. Then, of course, the internet happened and social media occurred, and this meant that communication caught up with where distribution had got to before that. And this meant that suddenly someone that had a bad experience on the other side of the Pacific Ocean could share that experience, and in real time I could see that experience and change my buyer behavior and whether or not I wanted to be associated with a brand. So for me, the key points are not that the problem is not that customers have changed. It's that businesses have forgotten how to talk to them. At the scale we operate at in this modern age, we need to figure out how we use technology to create relevant, engaging experiences for customers at every touch point, every time we see them.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And what Dave's touching on there is, what we would describe as designing with empathy. And this diagram up on the screen should be familiar to quite a lot of you. This is the value proposition canvas, and is a well-recognised starting point for validating or commencing a project. It seeks to show our customer needs and how we can design products and services to fulfil them. And here at IE, it's a lens that we always apply when responding to briefs or client requests. We find that when designing digital experiences, particularly in the physical environment, it's important to consider the holistic journey your customer will follow in order to complete their tasks or jobs. Applying a cognitive design approach, we attempt to anticipate what your customer is trying to achieve, what they're receptive to in terms of an experience, and what information they're likely to share. Where possible, we apply data or deep intelligence to better help serve those goals. We try to steer clear of the bloated interactions full of unnecessary steps that lead them to pretty obvious retail chosen outcomes. And we try to make sure that experiences are ultimately not too time consuming or invasive. Basically, if your primary objective is to solely capture data or treat customers as a target to be sold to, it's more than likely that your experience is going to fail. In short, ultimately, we focus less now on price, product or promotion, but attempt to connect audiences with curated, credible messages and interactions that will delight and inform them, and hopefully provoke them to talk and share. It's no surprise that the UK-based Digital High Street 2020 report calculates that more than $240 billion of retail sales are now influenced by digital. And that same report goes on to suggest that retailers whose services don't meet customers' expectations could expect to lose more than $20 billion a year. So what we thought we'd do is show you some of the best examples of digital that we've seen in the physical realm, some ours and some from around the world, and highlight some of the pains and gains that they attempt to talk to. We find in general that most requests fall into one of the following three broad buckets: intelligent signage, being sophisticated, mostly centrally managed digital displays that show video or images; interactive experiences, which are your brand-heavy, press-worthy, sensory-led experiences; or retail functionality, which is not the sexiest term, but includes everything from wayfinding to transacting and all functionality in between.
Diving deeper and potentially reiterating slightly on intelligent signage, for us that really describes digital displays that can show static or video content, be updated remotely and instantly, and scheduled for different conditions and audiences. These can be used in collaboration with peripheral technology such as beacons or facial recognition software, which in our research we discovered is probably more widely used than you think. We saw a stat, something like 30% of US retailers are using facial recognition software to gather data on their customers. But the point is, so we can use technologies like these to tailor messages to the individual or group, driving sales, engagement, and aiding a seamless customer journey. So the first example I want to show you is one from the UK. Harrods in London have implemented a really cool piece of intelligent signage that, whilst is being primarily used to show branding content, feeds back some really interesting information on their customers. Video walls like the one in the picture are equipped with facial recognition software that records the age, gender, and dwell time of individuals viewing the screen. This data is then fed back to provide an assessment of the impact of the campaign to the advertiser that had bought the space. This might sound very business focused, But the result for the customer is that just by engaging in the content they're most interested in, probably unconsciously, they're unknowingly sending quantitative feedback about that content that resonates with them, allowing brands to iterate and deliver what content that customer then finds most valuable. So what this might help to address is the customer's desire to feel more connected to the brand they buy. And when we start to think about the other pains and gains, we can look at what else can be addressed with intelligent signage. A really key one for me is things like products being out of stock. I remember speaking with a fashion retailer probably 6 months ago about their signage swap out in stores. They replace the poster in the window every 4 weeks, and without fail, within the first week, at least one of the items that appears on that poster will sell out completely. That leaves 3 weeks of customers coming in, not being able to purchase the item they came into the store for. Imagine the opportunity for sales if those image assets were on a digital platform that was linked to in-store stock levels and would only show items that were available in the store. So the next example I wanted to show you is one of ours. Nobody Denim, iconic Melbourne denim brand. They were actually the first pilot customer we worked with for Live. And what we really wanted to do with them was test something very similar to that idea. If we put black jeans on the screen behind POS, would they actually sell more black jeans? We did the test and the results came in absolutely yes. It appeared that just the simple presence of rotating schedules of images with models wearing black jeans in that store space was enough to influence the buyer behavior in the environment. The final one I wanted to show you on intelligent signage is one you've probably seen before. If you haven't, I highly recommend you jumping on YouTube after the webinar and checking it out. Pepsi created this amazing brand activation in the streets of London that did something very simple. They converted the glass window of a bus stop into an augmented reality screen, and with the camera pointed to the street behind it, it showed everything that was happening in real time. And then it was overlaid with this layer of unbelievable content, like tigers running down the street, meteors striking the pavement, or as you can see in the picture, a man dangling from a group of helium balloons. For Pepsi, it was really about creating a shareable, potentially viral experience that establishes it as a brand that people want to be associated with. And in my opinion, they did this incredibly successfully. So the next category we want to talk about, and one that potentially that last experience might sort of bridge into, is interactive experiences. That the rich brand press-worthy cousins of intelligent signage. From fully immersive virtual reality to interactive video walls, these experiences are less about finding and buying particular products and more about creating memorable and exciting experiences that people want to share and engage with. These tend to generally have a slightly shorter lifespan, but are far more impactful and have the potential to create just a massive amount of attention very quickly. I want to actually start with a quote for the creator behind the first example I'm about to show you. Digital experience in physical spaces are made or broken by the context that surrounds them. And this is something that I know definitely at IE we could not agree with more. It's such a great statement from Nathan Moody from San Francisco's based Stimulant. He acknowledges the power of considering the environment in which your digital experiences will be presented. Not only when responding to the user's needs, but harnessing the power of the context in which someone will interact with the experience. You can really start to push the envelope of what's possible. So what they did was create this incredible experience at One Liberty Place in Philadelphia. Essentially, it's an observation deck with a 360 panoramic view of the entire city. There's touchscreens that you can see on the left and right that create a second view, sort of a mirrored view of what you're seeing out the window. But it's a touchscreen that allows you to interact with over 100 interactive points of interest, showing everything from the history and stories from sort of the urban landscape called up as text on screen, or bringing up stunning photography that has been taken from the streets of Philadelphia. This digital implementation takes full advantage of the incredible context that surrounds it to enhance the experience for its users, creating a fully immersive space. The next one is one of ours that I wanted to show and talk about because this is a really great example of sort of a one-to-many experience. It was an activation we ran for Hurley at the Australian Open of Surfing, and it was in this massive tent on the beach side that has had a couple of thousand people through it in a few days, I think. Essentially what it did was let an individual approach a podium and interact with content about Hurley's pro surfers and their product. And then this experience was amplified to the larger video wall you see behind them, basically involving the entire space with that one-to-one interaction that was happening at the podium, which created this incredible energy. I mean, for Hurley, this was really about connecting customers to their brand, their rich heritage in surfing, and the quality and care that goes into creating their product. But it's really worth noting that they sold out of absolutely everything that filled the space in that time. So the third category that Nick mentioned, retail functionality, this for us really describes the sort of key functional jobs that a customer needs to complete when they enter a physical environment. Most often these are, navigating the store space, finding relevant information, comparing products, transacting. This is an area we see lots of businesses investing in much more heavily as technology improves and success stories emerge. It shows the clearest opportunities to us where you can demonstrate direct return on investment, and so it's a massively growing category. So this is an example, another one that I hope lots of you have seen before, because it was a really exciting piece of technology in store. And if you haven't, I recommend you check out the video. Rebecca Minkoff in their New York flagship did this incredible store of the future fit out that let customers explore full product range on these mirrored walls that were essentially touchscreens. So it would appear as a mirror, and then you could go up with a product and begin interacting with it. The part of this that I really want to talk about though is the change room. They did a complete digital overhaul of the change room experience. RFID tagging all of the products meant that when you brought in, the change room knew exactly what you'd have brought in, brought those products up on the touchscreen wall, and then, allowed you to do the very simple things you'd want to do, like requesting another size or color, or requesting from related items on the floor without you having to, lean over the door and shout for someone. And for me, that directly addresses that key customer pain point that so commonly occurs in a change room and seamlessly uses technology to solve them. So when you see things like this are possible, it really starts to open up the opportunities for how you can create a more connected customer journey. Thinking about things like the online personalization that's available on Sitecore, and how those same principles can be brought into the thinking that technology you bring into sort of stores or pop-ups. So the next and final example I wanted to show you is another one of ours. It was part of the work we did for Nike, and probably the true point of inspiration that led to the development of the For Your Life startup. It was a very simple solution to a very simple problem. Nike wanted to increase engagement in sales within its skateboarding range, and so we were tasked with developing some technology to go into multi-brand environments like a Rebel Sport here in Australia, to surface more information about their pro skaters and their product. The shoe wall had a small platform with a placard saying "Place shoe here," and all the shoes on the wall had RFID cards under the insole. So when they were placed on the platform, the screen surrounding would come alive with content about that shoe and the skaters that wore them. In the middle, you can see the iPad that allowed the customer to basically have the touch interaction, basically looking at additional product information, and then ultimately sending a link of that product's location on Nike's online store to either their mobile or email. So think 13-year-old boy comes into the store, can't afford the shoe, sends it to their mobile, and then can go home and pester mom and dad for the money they need to purchase it. This was an extremely successful installation with double digits uplifts in sales for all the stores that had them. And that's without even counting the sales that actually came through online.
Thanks for that set of examples there, Dave. Of course, the ideal scenario is when all of the big three work together, complementing each other and falling into their respective roles in this seamless customer journey. And that idea of a connected customer journey is nothing new. By implementing it effectively, particularly for large organizations though, it can be a massive undertaking. Cross-pollinating both physical and digital areas of a business is a real challenge. And in order to give the consumer that seamless customer experience they demand, an operational shift is most often required internally, fashionably known today as a digital transformation. For us, the real winners in this field appear to be businesses that understand the importance of early collaboration, between departments and attempting to break down this traditional siloed structure to ideation and production. And by approaching each challenge by asking, how might we produce the best, most authentic experience for our user, you can really start to move the needle. And there are huge rewards for both the consumers and the businesses. In regards to the digital in the physical space specifically, what people consider an experience itself is now evolving, with brands and organisations seeking to completely redefine the way in which they communicate with their audience. The expectations today are high, and the most impactful experiences consider everything, working adjacently to produce a holistic, user-focused delivery.
The one thing I want to call out is the challenge that this represents for businesses that want to undergo this sort of change. It's not only investing in and designing a customer-centric digital experience that makes sense, but it's also rolling this out to potentially a large network of stores, then maintaining and supporting that technology, both from an evolution and a break fix perspective, as well as the content that needs to go on them. And then there's educating the sort of at the coalface staff that are crucial to achieving success in these things. The people that work in the stores, that work next to a touchscreen you want your customers to interact with, if they're not bought in, that thing is going to be off and in the corner faster than you know what to do with it. And finally, sort of what data you want to capture, what information will help you make informed decisions about improving this technology is also so key, and such a big challenge about what you want to do when you're moving forward. Whether the future is wearables, like in our research we found this crazy digital fabric that had been developed between Levi's and Google that let the wearer adjust the volume of the music they were listening to via touching the sleeve of their jacket, or virtual reality showrooms, or something we've never even seen or thought of. The reality is that if you keep the customer at the heart of whatever you do, you really can deliver a great solution. Even if we're sitting in a cabin on a cliffside complaining about a product, more often than not, me as the consumer, I want to have a relationship with the brands I shop with, and I think that is a really comforting thought. So there are a few key takeaways that we really wanted to leave. The first one is something that I think we've probably reiterated quite heavily throughout the webinar. When designing a solution, you have to think about the customer jobs, understand their current pains and gains, and then really develop a solution that directly addresses them. The second is something that's really important, particularly if you're used to building digital solutions for web. Think about the context that surrounds a customer entering your space. And don't forget that they never came into a store intending to use a computer. So if you want them to, there needs to be a compelling value proposition for them. The third one is a sentiment that was probably carried through that I'm not sure we had probably addressed as directly as we could have, but what we really wanted to say is that these solutions can't be set and forget. The moment you stop iterating and improving is the moment the thing that you've produced starts becoming irrelevant to your customers. Next, the focus on curated, credible messages. This really extends across things much broader than just digital and physical spaces, but it's about communicating in a way that feels authentic to your customers. And finally, that technology exists to help us achieve goals. As long as you're clear when you start about what those goals are, and as long as they're connected to real customer problems that you're really trying to solve, the rest should be easy. Well, sort of easy.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Dave. Whilst we were putting this presentation together, we looked at a lot of stuff, and we came across, this, which is pretty scientific, I suppose. It was a research conducted by Temple out in the US, University's Center for Neural Decision Making, and I found it fascinating. And it was documented whilst looking at responses to digital and physical channels. It states the obvious, potentially, but reaffirms the idea that a positive physical experience can further heighten the value and desire attached to your products and services. Interestingly, those same subjects tested a week later had a better memory of the physical media and a much bigger emotional reaction when thinking about it. So if you need any further convincing, read up on the ventral striate atom, which apparently is a part of the brain that lit up during that research. But ultimately, I'd probably like to finish on a sentiment that I've borrowed from Matt Candy, who's a vice president over at IBM. And this is: the last best experience you have anywhere suddenly becomes the minimum expectation for the experience you want everywhere. And we'll leave that with you today. Go out there, create some wonderful stuff. We hope that what we've shared with you has been, helpful, and there's some thought starters there. It's an absolutely fascinating space, and everyone's challenging each other daily to come up with better, more valuable stuff. So thank you, and if there's any questions,